Hey, what is up, guys? My name is Isaac Painter, and I'm a videographer based here in mid-Michigan. And the other day, I had a kind of a revelation with color grading. I've always had this ongoing battle, and it's always been difficult for me until I kind of figured out some stuff the other day. So this video is going to be centered specifically at Fujifilm shooters, just because all of this video was shot on Fujifilm on the X-H1 in classic chrome. And I just really enjoyed color grading, like recolor grading this footage the other day. And I've just been tired of using LUTs because I want to know what makes footage look good. I want to know how to make a recipe that makes footage pop and just look really nice. So I'm going to be walking you through kind of my process in this video. So if you're into that sort of thing, make sure you stick around and like the video. Let's get into it. Okay, so I'm in Premiere Pro in the color window, and this is the first shot we're going to be working on. So I really like this shot because it has a lot of greens, and there's nice leading lines, and it has a lot of blues in it as well. So this is already graded. Like, I can turn off this grade. This is the straight out of camera shot. This is with it graded. But I'm going to delete that grade and show you guys how I got there. So first of all, we're going to come over to the basic correction, and I'm going to open up my Lumetri scopes here. So basically all these scopes are going to do is the circle one is showing me the colors in the frame and which direction they're shifting more. Sometimes your eyes can play tricks on you, and it's hard to actually see what like hue, what color really is. So that's going to help you with that with skin tones. And then this Luma Parade on the left is showing me if my blacks are truly going to be black in the frame, if they're going to be crushed and not have detail, or if my whites are going to be blown out or have detail in the frame. So basically with this Luma Parade, all you want is you want something on the bottom to be touching the 0 line but not going past, and something on the top to be touching the 100 line, not going past that. So that's going to make it look like it's true blacks in the frame and it's true whites, but they're still going to have information in them basically. This shot was literally exposed perfectly. I don't know how I did that, but I did, so I'm not going to mess with that in this one. But if I were going to, I would just use the blacks and white sliders over here in basic correction. And normally the first thing I would do is correct the white balance, but this white balance was actually correct. So I'm going to move straight into my grading process, which I'm going to head down to the curves for. And the first thing I'm going to do, this is pretty basic, everyone does this pretty much, is I'm going to make a point in the center here on my curve and one down here. I'm going to drag this down and make a pretty basic S-curve just to give a little more contrast that makes the video kind of pop a little more off the screen. And then I'm going to head down here to the hue versus saturation. So really all this is going to do is it's going to change the hue of the colors a little bit, and it's also going to change the saturation of them. So for the sake of the skin tones in this shot, I like how they look. I don't want to desaturate people's skin. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to make a point right here and a point right here. So that's going to lock off the skin tones, and I'm not going to desaturate those. But with the blues and the greens, that's really what I want to desaturate. So I'm going to make a point here, and this is like what I'm going to desaturate. So I'm going to just drag down in the middle and desaturate both of those. If I turn off this adjustment, you can see like it's pretty minor, but it did make a difference. Pull down the blues a little bit more and the greens a little bit more with extra points. So that is before, that's after. Not a huge adjustment, just a little stylistic thing I like to do. Then I will come down here to the hue versus hue, and again I'm going to do the same thing with the skin tones because I don't want to change the hue of those. I'm going to lock those off, and then I'm going to change the hues of the greens. I'm going to pull them down to the blue area a little bit so they look a little cooler, more real to life. And then I'm going to pull the blues a little bit towards like the turquoise area. I don't like them to look purple. I like them to look a little more turquoise, so kind of like a teal-ish turquoise color. So I'm pretty happy with that. Those again are really minor adjustments. They may not even be super visible to you. You don't want to go too far. Like if you see I drag the slider down like the yellows and greens all the way down, you see it looks really blotchy and super fake. So this should all be minor stuff, and this is all going to start with shooting your videos correct in camera. That's going to make your color grading process way easier overall. So make sure you're exposing correctly and your white balance isn't on auto and stuff like that. All right, so after that, I'm going to head down to the hue versus luma. This isn't something I always mess with, but for this particular shot, I know I want my blues to look a little bit deeper and have just a little bit more of like a punch to them, like they just kind of pop. So I'm going to do the exact same thing as before with the like reds and yellows area. So I lock those off. I don't want to adjust the skin tones. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to lock off the blues and I'm going to pull them down. You'll see the adjustment that makes in the sky. Now, again, I don't want to go too far. It's going to make it look really weird. But I'm just going to take it to about right there and then turn that's before, that's after. You can see how much more depth that adds in the sky and more contrast in the shot. And a lot of this is just going to be, adjusting stuff and then going back and fixing other stuff. So like now I'm kind of realizing that the blues look a little bit, too kind of teal for my preference. So I'm going to come back up here to the hue versus hue and pull them down just a tad. So that's what we're looking at there. And then the last thing I'll really do to most shots is I'll come down to the luma versus saturation. This is literally useless for me besides this one thing. So I make a point on this line and a point on this line, and then I grab each side and pull it all the way to the bottom. So all this is going to do is it's going to make sure that the blacks have no color shift. So like sometimes the blacks in shots can look really green or kind of magenta, and we don't want them to have any color shift. We want them to look the same. So like we want them to look real life basically is what we're going for. So like the white of her dress, the black shadows on the ground, they're not going to have any color shift because we desaturated the whites and the blacks in the luma versus saturation. And that is pretty much where I leave it for this shot. So I'm super happy with what that is looking like. We can turn that off. That's before, that is after, and I think that looks pretty awesome. So let's move on to the next one. Alrighty, so this is going to be our second shot for this video that we're going to color grade. So you can tell now that this shot is actually pretty underexposed. So that's the first thing we're really going to adjust. So I'm going to make sure I have my scopes up here, and you can see that nothing really is touching the 0 line, and everything is way low from the 100 line where we want our whites to be. So we're going to come over to basic corrections, and we're just going to drag the whites up until something hits that line basically. So I drag the whites all the way to 100 and there's still nothing happening. So I'm going to drag the exposure up to about right there, bring the blacks down till they hit right there, and that is our adjustment so far. So like already that's a big adjustment. Now we're basically just dealing with the correct exposure. Again, I think the white balance is pretty much perfect on this. I might warm it up a tad and shift it a bit more towards green, but I'm liking how that's looking so far. So with our basic corrections done, we can head down to the curves. We're going to do the exact same thing as last time, place a point in the center of the RGB curve, and we're going to make a little bit of an S curve just to add a little more punch. So that's just making a very, very minor adjustment, making the blacks look a little more pungent, and everything's looking good. So like already, I think this shot looks super nice. The greens look really good. The oranges look really nice, but there are still minor adjustments I'm going to add to this shot. So one of those is I'm actually going to come over to the red curve, and I'm going to pull up the bottom point just a little bit. So I'm just going to be adding a little bit of red into the shadows, and I just think it looks nice. I don't know why, but it's something I've been doing. So then we'll come down to the hue versus saturation. Just like before, I'm going to lock off the skin tones so I don't desaturate those, and I'm going to desaturate the greens and the blues a pretty good bit, but not too much to where they don't look lifelike. So I think right around that area looks really nice. We can see before, after. I think it just looks more real life, not too poppy, and that's looking pretty good. So let's head down to the hue versus hue. Again, lock off the skin tones. I'm going to pull the greens a little bit towards the cooler side and the blues a little bit more towards teal to make those look more realistic and not purple. That's looking good. We got before, after, very minor adjustments again. And then I'm not even going to mess with hue versus luma this time. I don't want to adjust the luminance or brightness of any of these colors. So I'm going to come back down to the luma versus saturation, just like last time. Make sure all of the whites are white and the blacks are black. So we're going to saturate or desaturate all of these. And then lastly, just because we have a lot of skin tones in this shot, I'm actually going to show you guys how I dial in skin tones. So I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom here, and I'm going to click on the HSL secondary, And all this is going to allow you to do is to adjust specific colors in the frame. So I'm going to select the reds here, and then I'm going to check this little box next to the words color gray, and that's going to throw a mask on this. So it's masking out everything besides the skin tones. I know it looks a little bit weird, but it is a super helpful tool. And you can adjust, like get your adjustment kind of dialed in here. If you only want like really the reds to be selected, I can just drag that more towards the reds and it's going to change the selection. But for now, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to bump the exposure, or I'm going to actually take down the saturation just a little bit. And then I think for the most part, the hue and like the temperature of the skin tones look pretty good. If I come over here and look at my vector scope, it is showing that the line is primarily going towards the red, which is good. That's where we want it to go. Skin tones should be going towards the red. That's just where they naturally lie on the color spectrum. So I'm going to come up here under where it says correction and hit these three little dots. It's going to open up these three shadow, midtone, and highlight color wheels. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the midtones a little bit towards red, because midtones and shadows should look red in skin. Just it makes them look more lifelike. That's a super minor adjustment, but it does make skin tones look better. And then the highlights should probably reflect just kind of the main colors in your scene. So I'm going to push them a little bit warmer, because this was more towards the golden hour. There was a lot of warmth in the frame. The shadows, I'm going to pull just barely down to the blues. So I'm going to turn off my selection now. And literally, like, this is super minor adjustments. This is just tweaking. Like, I don't know if you can even really tell if you aren't looking at these side by side. This is just minor stuff to make everything really dialed in and look real to life. So really, guys, that is it. It's pretty simple for the most part. Everyone has their different color grading style, but we can look at this shot. I will turn it off. So this is our before, this is our after. I think it looks really nice. I might even like warm it up a little bit more to kind of match the time of day it was shot at, which was golden hour. But I think it looks really good, and I know it fits my style personally pretty well. So that's kind of how I color grade it. For the most part, it's pretty simple. It might change depending on the project and what look I'm going for, but that's how I color grade, you know, wedding footage and stuff that's shot outside like this, and, you know, dealing with greens and blues and hues and saturations and all of that. So I hope you liked this video, and I hope it helped you to figure out how to grade your Fujifilm footage. This was all shot in the X-H1 in classic chrome, and I really like how this footage looks out of camera. Like I said before, that's a huge part of it. Make sure that you're shooting everything as good as possible in camera, so you don't have to try to correct and resurrect bad footage. That's not going to go over well. So, you know, shoot everything well, the best you can in camera, and color grading is going to be way easier. You know, just make sure you have the best color settings you can on your camera. That'll produce the most natural skin tones. I hope you liked this video. I hope it helped you out. If you did, you can like and subscribe, and I would love to have you comment below if you did like this video. I use natural light to light this video, so it looks a little different, but if you liked it and it helped you out, please let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.